直令天帝の忌避陽大神の名において発す死火球は北楽師門の帝を開き雨林の軍勢をやここに将来せんいざや参り守る
Ready or not, she's coming.
よく連理
In this video, I hope to help you figure out whether or not you will roll for Yang this New Year's. She is coming up soon, and although many of us are focused on lottery right now as of the time of this video, it is still important to keep an eye on the horizon and look at what's coming because this is a very interesting servant who brings a unique skill set that we have not yet seen in the game. First, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. This is not going to include any analysis of her aesthetic appeal, her servant design, her card art, anything like that. I want to keep this as unbiased and objective as possible, and to be completely honest with you, if I start talking about those things, then I'm probably not going to be able to remain objective. So before we discuss whether you should or should not roll for Yang, let's take an in-depth look at her kit to really understand what we're talking about here. Yang is a limited SSR foreigner with a single target arts NP. She has a double arts, double quick deck with 0.51% NP charge modifier on her attacks. Now for comparison's sake, FGO, one of the best arts card owners in the game, has 6 hits on her arts card and 0.54% on her NP charge attack modifier. So Yang is not quite at that level, but that's nothing to scoff at. Yang still holds her own quite well. As we can see here, Yang has 2 standard banners, one being the New Year's campaign coming up in a couple of weeks, and the other being the Imaginary Scramble pre-release campaign, which North America will get in late 2022, either October or November. Other than those 2 campaigns, we have only seen her in GSSR's 5th anniversary, 6th anniversary, and then again in the 2023 summoning campaign that NA will get. Again, she has the highest attack value among all foreigner servants, and she has a lot of deep lore, not only in trivia, but also in her bio and her ascension lines. There's a lot to her, a lot in her art. Again, we won't go into those, but she's very interesting, so even if you don't roll for her, I do recommend checking out her bio and really reading up on her. Let's take a look through her skills here. Her first skill is pretty good right out of the gate. It gives an invincible for 1 turn. It also charges her NP gauge by 10% every turn for 3 turns. And it is a star bomb, although a small one at first. She also has a 500% chance to draw attention of male enemies, so it's a male-oriented taunt. This gets a rank up later on. It goes from a 5 to 15 star bomb to 15 to 25, so it's a massive upgrade in the star department. And it switches from male enemies to all enemies, which is extremely important because, as we'll see later, her kit depends on her getting attacked. Next up, we see her second skill. It absorbs all enemies NP gauge by 1, so it's the inverse of Summer Melt's kit. The scaling on that is 10 to 20% per tick drawn. So if there are 3 enemies, and this skill is level 10, she will gain 60% battery, in addition to reducing the enemy's defense for 3 turns by 10 to 20%. This is the highest cooldown in her kit at 7 turns. Her first and third skill have 6 turn cooldowns. Her third skill is definitely her signature skill. It gives herself the Living Flame buff for 3 attacks over 3 turns. It reduces the enemy's defense by 10% when she is attacked by them, and it inflicts a burn upon them when they attack her as well. It also increases her defense by 10 to 20%. This is not the important part of her skill. It's definitely the burn application and the burn damage, as we'll see going forward. She does have the fantastic Foreigner class passive skill, Existence Outside the Domain. She gains 2 critical stars every turn, and she has debuff resist up by 12%. Other than that, she has Divinity B. It increases her own damage by 175. That's probably not going to make the difference in any battles, but who knows. Her first 2 append skills are obviously standard, but her third append skill is an interesting one. It gives her anti-ruler attack damage. It increases her attack by 20 to 30% when going against rulers, which is very interesting because most servants have class disadvantage against rulers. As a foreigner, she does not, and this increases that capability even further. Looking at her NP here, she does have a 4-hit arts NP. It deals damage to 1 enemy from 900 to 1500% NP 5. After it deals damage, it will then inflict burn for 3 turns to them for 3000 to 6000 damage per turn at NP 5. Her overcharge effect is a very good one. It deals extra damage to enemies with the burn debuff from 150 to 200% at 500% overcharge. As we watch her NP play out here, it's important to note that her gimmick is entirely based on this burn mechanic. Yes, she has invincible and target focus. Yes, she has a star bomb. And yes, she can deal some pretty hefty damage when her extra damage hits. But everything that makes her unique and special is contingent upon the burn application. Taking a look at her skills, she does have pretty standard layout for her skills for a foreigner class, using all class agnostic materials. She also requires a large variety of them, 16 different materials for her ascension and skills. That number jumps to 20 when you include her append skills. Now that we have a pretty thorough understanding of Yang's kit and what she brings to the table, let's look at reasons why you might roll for her. The first and most obvious one is an easy knockout, Castoria. She's coming, she's going to dominate the meta, she's going to absolutely change what your support lists look like it or not. This happened on the JP server when she was released, and Yang was one of the biggest beneficiaries of Castoria's release. Moving on from the obvious, we will look at her kit as a plus to why you should roll for her. As soon as you get a Yang, you have a 1-turn invincible, a taunt on male enemies, and a 3-turn, 10% per turn NP battery. No matter how much you level the skill, those aspects will not change. Only the amount of stars dropped will change. So that's a massive benefit to a lot of masters who maybe don't have the deepest set of materials ready and waiting. First skill also gets a fantastic upgrade, as we said earlier. It gives her a better outlook going forward. It doesn't really change her ceiling, but it does give her better utility for more different masters. Moving on, as we look at her entire kit as a reason why you should roll for her, 60% battery on a standard 3 enemy node at level 10 is nothing to scoff at. It is extremely powerful. The 60% absorption on this skill plus the 10% gain from her first skill means that on your second turn, you could potentially have a 70% NP gauge. That's more than enough to get a lot of usage out of a wide variety of servants, not to mention mystic codes being thrown in there as well. And finally, as we include the third skill as a reason to roll for her, the synergy from her third skill to her first skill is undeniable. It's very strong. Not only does it mean that you can protect others on the field using that first skill, but you can make the enemy pay for attacking her. And then, since you can already build up a great deal of NP gauge after that first turn, not only utilizing her first skill and second skill, but also taking hits from the enemy, you will make them pay even more by hitting them with the NP that deals extra damage to an enemy that does have that burn debuff that she just applied to them. Another reason to roll for her is that she can make fantastic use of the Honey Lake CE that is coming in the summer event next year. Ignore Invincible is a wonderful attribute to have on any CE, but not only that, it increases damage against enemies with burn. Yang wants her enemies burned at all times, so this CE, as you can see by the art, is natural for her to make use of. Next, she does deal double damage to Berserkers and Pretenders, and she takes half damage from Berserkers and Pretenders. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there may or may not be some very important fights in the future in which you will want that advantage. Now that we've seen some reasons to roll for her, what are some reasons not to roll for her? Well, first up, there's, again, the obvious. If you don't have your own Castoria, or a Tamamo, or a Nero Bride, or even a Lanling, you will need to really hone in on a specific playstyle and dedicate your strategy to utilizing her kit in the most maximal way possible. Luckily, everyone has access to Kiyohime, so you can have access to that spreading fire debuff. But outside of that, if you don't have gold servants on deck ready to enable her, you will need to really focus in on maximizing her potential. Without that sort of focus, without that sort of dedication, and without those supporters, her kit synergy starts to fall apart because those first and third skills have 6-turn cooldowns. It means that for 3 turns, she will essentially be sitting there as a normal servant, not doing anything within her niche. Now, again, this can be mitigated in some fun ways, including the utilization of Tomoe or Kiyohime for the spreading fire, but nevertheless, if you do not use or seek out any of those supporters, it's going to be a much different servant and a much lower damage ceiling. Another reason you may not want to roll for her is that although Yang does have the highest attack of any foreigner in the game, she is not the first single target foreigner that we've gotten access to in game, not even the first arts. MHXX does fill that niche, although they play entirely different damage dealing roles, Yang focusing on burn, MHXX focusing on her special attack modifier, Not to mention Abigail Williams, who's been in the game for a fair bit of time now, having her buff removal on her NP, which is very strong. Overall, I hope this video was helpful to you. Maybe you learned a lot about her. Maybe you found out whether or not you want to roll for her immediately. Maybe you'll make that decision going forward. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you so much. Take care.